On behalf of the Cabangan family and the ALC Media Group, we give thanks to the Lord for allowing us to continue the story started 30 years ago by my father, the late Ambassador and Chairman Emeritus of the ALC Group of Companies, Antonio L. Cabangon Chua. It is the story of how a small magazine got built on the strength of an incomparable friendship between a man of business and a man of words. This is the story of how they both cherished literature and vowed to nurture excellent literary works in the pages of the magazine. Through the best of times and the worst of times, we continue this story. This is the story of the Philippines Graphic.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second Philippines Graphic Business Mirror webinar for this year. Today's topic is mining. I am your host, Ann Ruth de la Cruz, Wellness Editor of the Philippines Graphic. Joining us later for the question and answer portion is Jasper Arcalas, the agri-commodities reporter of Business Mirror. To give the opening remarks for this very timely webinar is the publisher of the Philippines Graphic and Business Mirror, Mr. T. Anthony C. Cabangon.
Traffic and Business Fair extend our sincerest thanks to all our guests. I wish to announce that the highlights of our sustainability webinar will be published in the May 2021 issue of the Philippines Graphic. 4% of the world's estimated reserves of nickel in 2018. According to the Board of Investments in the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, the Philippines has the potential to be among the top 10 largest mining powers in the world, as it ranks 4th in copper, 5th in nickel, and 6th in chromite resources. Out of its 30 million hectares of land area, 30% or 9 million hectares has been found to be geologically prospective for metallic minerals, while an additional 17% or 5 million hectares of its total land area is potentially rich in non-metallic deposits. With so much potential in this industry, Philippines Graphic and Business Mirror decided to come out with this webinar that will raise awareness on the significance of the mining industry in the overall economy and state of environment in the Philippines. We hope that after this webinar, we will all have a better understanding about the government's policies and regulations that affect the mining industry and how the private sector has been coping with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic so far. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Boss Anton, for your message. We have gathered today a very distinguished panel of speakers who will update all of us on the state of the country's mining industry. Titled The Philippine Mining Industry Prospecting for Positive Outcomes. We have speakers from the government, private sector, and the academe who will discuss the different aspects of the mining industry. To make this webinar more interesting for our viewers, we will have a contest. I will be asking one question during the webinar, and the first, third, and fifth persons who can give their correct answer via PM will win a Bosch chopper. To join the contest, please like the Facebook page of Philippines Graphic and send your answer via PM. Shaira Barnuevo, our page administrator, will inform me of our three winners at the end of the webinar. To start the ball rolling, allow me to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is both a lawyer and a licensed mining engineer, having graduated from the Ateneo de Davao University College of Law in 2006 and the Cebu Institute of Technology University College of Mining Engineering in 1984. He passed the bar examination in 2007 and the board exam for mining engineers in 1984. He has been in the practice for 32 years as a registered mining engineer and as a lawyer for 10 years. He joined the Mines and Geosciences Bureau in 2000 and rose from the ranks, entering as Engineer 2 and now as the Director of the MGB. He had wanted to be here personally, but he had to beg off because of an emergency meeting. He did record his presentation for this afternoon. Here's Attorney Wilfredo G. Moncano, Director of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources.
What mining is. Mining is the extraction of valuable or economic minerals from the Earth's surface. There are stages of mining. These are exploration, development, extraction, utilization and rehabilitation, and or decommissioning. The first stage during exploration, we search for the ore and define the extent of the deposit. Upon determination that the ore deposit is economically and technically viable to be mined, we proceed to development, wherein we prepare the deposit for mining. We provide access to the deposit, and we establish the necessary and auxiliary mine facilities. After the development, that is the time when we mine or extract minerals. When the minerals are exhausted from the site, rehabilitation, decommissioning is done right after. This is the last stage of the stages in mining. Thus, mining is a temporary land use only. After mining, we build a new ecosystem similar to the old one, like a new forest, or plan an alternative land use that will ensure that the affected communities can use to sustain their livelihood and economy when mining is done on the areas. This is to avoid ghost mining towns. So how do we mine? We have two major kinds of mining methods, and it largely depends on the depth, the size, and the other characteristics of the ore deposit and the rock surrounding the ore. These two major mining methods are surface mining, one, which is utilized for shallow deposits, and underground mining, two, for deep deposits. For a better appreciation of these methods, I will show a short animation on how surface mining and underground mining are being done. As you can see, the first deposit is 300 meters from the surface, the one encircled. That's the deposit that is 300 meters from the surface. For this type of deposit, surface mining, particularly open pit mining, will be employed. We first remove the overburden, then extract the ore. After we mine the deposit, we immediately implement rehabilitation of the area. In this case, the open pit was converted to a recreational lake. The second deposit is a shallow lenticular type of deposit, as shown by the arrow. This can also be extracted through surface mining, particularly contour mining. In the Philippines, contour mining is normally utilized for nickel deposit. In contour mining, we can implement progressive rehabilitation of the area. Example would be planting of the bamboos upon extracting a certain portion of the ore deposit. The third deposit shown in the animation is located in the deeper part of the earth. Thus, extraction through surface mining is no longer viable, as too much overburden needs to be removed for the opening of that mineral deposit. For this deposit, underground mining is the best mining method to be employed. We drive access to the deposit from the surface, then conduct mining, after which we backfill the mine out area, then seal the mine. This is what transpired during the life of the mine. Now let me give you an overview of the Philippine mining industry, mining before and the mining today. Historically, in the mid-15th century, the Spaniards discovered the existence of mining in the Philippines. Gold and silver were the minerals mined and used as jewelries by the leaders of the tribe. In the 1930s until prior to the Second World War, the contribution of mining to the national economy measured in terms of the gross domestic product was a high 20 to 25%. Mining was the second biggest industry in the country then. After the war, In the years 1950s to the 1970s, the devastation caused by the war to the mines, the contribution went down between 4 to 5% because some of the operating mines have closed down. In the mid-1970s to the late 80s, slowly the annual GDP percentages from mining went higher to more than 5% because of the copper boom. But it nosedived again after the INSA revolution in 1986. The Philippine Mining Industry under the Mining Act of 1995 with globally competitive provision has been in place since 1995 or 25 years ago. However, the sector's growth and contribution to the gross domestic product have has been less than ideal, accounting for only about 0.6% of the GDP in 2019. Also, the mineral sector accounts for 0.5% of employment and 6% of exports. Now we talk about mining under fiscal regime. Mining in the Philippines requires mining permits or contracts. So February 2021, these are some of the existing major mining tenements. There are a total of 837 exploration permits, mineral production sharing agreements, financial technical assistance agreements, industrial sand and gravel permits, mineral processing permits, mineral buyer and mining patents, which cover a total land area of 757,805 hectares. However, the said hectarage is not entirely mined. In this slide, taken from an audiovisual presentation in 2018, out of the 30 million hectare land area of the Philippines, only 0.567% or less than 1% is being utilized by mining. Represented this map of the red dots where the major large-scale, small-scale mining operations are being conducted. According to Mr. Howard Hartman, a book author on mining, everything on earth comes from two sources. These are plants through agriculture and minerals through mining. Thus, mining is significant unless a substitute for these minerals will be discovered. In remote and uninhabited areas, mining is a catalyst for development. In mining provinces, mining is one of the major sources of revenue of the local government unit. That revenue will be used in providing services to its constituents. Also, mining has a big role in the export industry. Mining generates jobs and creates multiplier effects that will give more employment and income opportunities for the country. Mining helps in reducing poverty, which is one of the main problems of the country. The next slide will show the contribution of mining in the national and local economy. The Philippine mining industry has performed well in the last several years in terms of economic indicators, even though the mining industry suffered from multiple backlash affected by the pandemic. The contribution of mining to the gross domestic product has not been able to break the 1.5% barrier for a long time now. But new mining projects is a positive trend that we can hope for in the upcoming months. Even though we are on a pandemic last year, mining in the first quarter alone has contributed 0.6% to the country's GDP already. Our contribution to the total exports in 2019 for mineral and mineral products is $4.6 billion US, which is 6.6% of the total exports of the Philippines. Our contribution to the total exports in 2019 for non-metallic minerals is $267 million US, which is 0.4% of the total exports of the Philippines. You may say this is small, but this is because we are utilizing our non-metallic minerals to the government's Build program. Unemployment in 2019 reflects 184,000 people, which is of the total employment in the Philippines. While estimates may vary, it is conservatively assumed that for every direct job in the mining industry, but 4 indirect jobs to be generated in the upstream and downstream sectors. In terms of taxes, fees, and royalties from 2019 reflect 25.4 billion pesos paid by the mining companies. These figures represent the statistics of the mining industry on a national scale. The real economic contribution of mining is realized if we look at it on a local scale, particularly in the mining provinces. Data taken from the Philippine Statistics Authority in 2015 show that the contribution of mining to the gross regional domestic product, or GRDP, for the mining provinces of Mimarupa and Caraga, 25 billion pesos or 21.7 billion pesos are the gross value added in the GRDP of the said regions. In Caraga, the nickel capital of the Philippines, mining contributes the largest to its GRDP at 22%, followed by services and agriculture. The same applies to mining in Mimarupa, whose contributions account to 20% of its GRDP. Now, let me talk about the current regime on mining in the Philippines. We are currently covered by Republic Act number 7942 or the Philippine Mining Act of 1995, and also Republic Act 7076 or the People's Small Scale Mining Act of 1991, and Executive Order number 79 dated July 6, 2012, and their implementing rules and regulations. Let me talk about Executive Order number 79, which is issued by President Aquino III. The salient features of EO 79 includes identification and mapping of additional areas close to mining, enforcement of upgraded environmental standards, review of the performance of mining operations and cleansing of non-moving mining rights, rationalization of mining rights and contracts, development of value-adding and downstream industries, the creation of a cabinet-level Mining Industry Coordinating Council, or the MICC. It ensures consistency of local ordinances with the national laws and the Constitution, and the promotion of transparency in the mining industry. Now, we will proceed to the current or the existing regulatory framework. Exploration permit is the initial mode of entry to acquire mining rights for large-scale mining in the Philippines. The other one, Phase A, or the Mineral Production Sharing Agreement, and FTA are the instrument for those ready to develop and commercially operate. Phase A requires 40% ownership, 60% for Filipinos, 40% for foreigners. But FTA or the Financial Technical Assistance Agreement may be 100% foreign owned. Mineral Production Sharing Agreement require 100 million capitalization, pesos capitalization. On production sharing agreements or PSAs, there are 3 forms. One is simple mineral production sharing, second is joint venture agreement, and co-production sharing agreement. For financial technical assistance agreement, the required capitalization is $4 million during exploration stage and 500 million pesos during starting development. National taxes and local taxes. Proponents, mining companies has to pay 4% excise taxes and also real property taxes, local business taxes, customs charges, etc. Small-scale mining is done inside Minambayan. And small-scale mining is a nationalized industry that is limited only to Filipinos. Let me talk about the challenges in the existing mining policies. First challenge is the misconception that mining is pervasive in the country. But in reality, only in the media because the actual mining occurrence is small. It's only 0.56% of the country's land area. Mining contributes less than 1% to the GDP and employment, so it can be stopped without harm to the country. Yes, it may be less than 1%, but it's not all of the provinces in the country has also mining operations. The other challenge is in EO number 79, which is the moratorium on the grant of mineral production, of new mineral production sharing agreements. And then there is DNR Administrative Order number 2017-10, which prohibits the use of the open pit method of mining for the extraction of copper, gold, silver, and or complex ores. As a result of this policy, certain large-scale metallic mining projects in the pipeline are affected, including the Sagittarius Mines Incorporated Tampakan Copper Gold Project, the PT Copper Gold Project in Davao de Oro, and Phoenix Silangan Copper Gold Project in Surigao. If the said projects will be allowed, they will require approximately 250 billion pesos investment and an increase in the mining country's contribution to the mining industry's contribution to the gross domestic product to 1.5% from 0.6%. Will also provide additional yearly export of 90 billion pesos, increase in national and local taxes by 13.5 billion a year, and social expenditure and indigenous people's royalties by 1.3 billion pesos a year. Now, on the industry reforms, what has been done so far? Well, the DNR has institutionalized the audit and review, and also the use it and lose it policy. Right now, there are 1,200 mining applications that have been denied, and 12 EPCs have been cancelled. The other reform is the faster approval of complete mining application, the establishment of satellite MGB office in Mineralized Province, one is in Dinagat, which is done in 2017, the embedding of MGB personnel in the municipalities and in the province. There are now 148 personnel, and this is implemented in 2017. And the use of high-tech equipment for monitoring and volume surveys. We have drones, RTKs. This will also started and continuing. Another mining policy that is being implemented is DNR Administrative Order 2018-19, which provides the guidelines for additional environmental measures for operating surface metallic mines. Some of the features of these additional environmental measures include the following. One, the topsoil, the subsoil are now collected from the stripping activities, and this shall be stockpiled for revisitation and rehabilitation purposes. This is important because topsoil and subsoil supports the growth of grasses and trees. A 20-meter buffer zone shall be established inward from the mining tenement boundary and outward from the edges of the normal high water line of rivers and streams within the tenement area. But the most notable feature of this DAO is the provision of the maximum disturbed area for nickel mines, which range from 50 hectares for a 1 million tons a year mine to 100 hectares, 14 million tons a year mine, depending on the scale of mining operations, and may be increased up to 162 hectares only for mining operations with processing plants. Then we have Memorandum Circular number 2018-02, which provides for the guidance for compliance monitoring and rating or scorecard of mining permits contracts. The said Memorandum Circular provides for a standard monitoring system that ascertains compliance with terms and conditions of mining permits contracts and the existing laws, rules, and regulations. Performance rating system through scorecard is provided to determine the compliance level of mining contractors and permit holders. These are the mining companies are scored on the basis of the tenement compliance, safety and health, environmental, and the social aspects. To be compliant, mining contractor, permit holder, or permittee shall have an overall performance rating of 80% in no score or rating lower than 75% in any of the said aspects. Now let me take you to the Philippines' best mine environmental practices, which includes progressive rehabilitation and decommissioning practices of mine out areas and ongoing rehabilitation of abandoned mining areas by the Philippine government. This picture shows the environmental impacts and control strategies of land resources by Oceanagold, Philippines, and in Nueva Vizcaya and LNL Archipelago Minerals in Zambales. The next slide is the environmental impacts and control strategies of land resources of Tagalito Mining in Claver, Surigao, and Coral Nickel Corporation in Palawan. Next picture, environmental impacts and control strategies of land resources of Hinatuan Mining in Surigao and Rio Tuba Nickel Mining in Palawan. Then we have the environmental impacts and control strategies on water resources of Philippine Mineral Resources Corporation in Masbate and Hinatuan Mining Corporation in Surigao. And also the environmental impacts and control strategies on water resources of Oceanagold in Nueva Vizcaya. And another picture of the control strategies on noise and vibration of Oceanagold, Philippines. Then we have the environmental impacts and control strategies on air quality by Rio Tuba Nickel Mining Corporation through the water spray along the road access. On this slide, we can see on a yearly basis the rehabilitation that took place on a mine out area at Rio Tuba Nickel Mining Corporation. And we also have a yearly reckoning of the rehabilitation of Coral Bay Nickel Corporation on their tailings pond. This picture will show the rehabilitation of Carbon Copper Corporation at Cebu, and then the rehabilitation of Phoenix Gold Philippines in Zamboanga. This one shows the rehabilitation of Rapu minerals in Albay and the rehabilitation of the PBI Resources Development Philippines in Zamboanga. Now they have pictures of what the government has done to rehabilitate abandoned mines. These are mines that were mining prior to the Philippine Mining Act. No? So these mines were operated in 1950s up to 1970s and 80s. So as you know the pictures, the Bogacay mines in Samar. And then another one is Black Mountain incorporated in Bigit to stabilize the slopes. And mitigation of the mercury content in the soil and the water in Palawan, Quicksilver Mines incorporated. And that is my presentation. Thank you and have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Moncano, for your video presentation. Attorney Moncano will be ably represented during the question and answer portion by Mr. Larry Herades, Division Chief of the Tenements Mining Division. Before we proceed to our next speaker, just a few shout-outs. Shout out to Marcel Villegas of Makati. Hello there. Sheila May Calizo of Cavite. Darian Bas of Dinapige. J.E. Barantes, Vela Crisma of Binyan, Alex Figueroa of San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, and Boyma Baliw Baliw of Benguet Abra. Thank you all for watching. Our next speaker is currently the Executive Director of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines. He joined the Chamber of Mines in 2011 as Vice President for Legal and Policy and was appointed Executive Director in 2017. He previously served as an associate at the Manalo, Puno, Hoxon, and Placido law offices, and later as legal manager at the Lepanto Consolidated Mining Company. He has 20 years' experience in civil labor and administrative law, and a decade's worth of exposure in policy review, advocacy, and reform in the mining sector. He obtained his bachelor's degree in political science and Bachelor of Laws from the University of the Philippines. To speak about managing wealth, examining the benefits of large-scale metallic mining, here is Attorney Ronald S. Residoro. Attorney Ron, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Anne. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
And thank you for the opportunity to present at this
Yung
afternoon's
cover lang
webinar.
ng slides muna. Wait lang, Sir Ron. Ha?
Shoutout sa mga taga Laguna, ha? Nandito ako sa Nuvali. Pwede
Nakita
pa lang
mo na, sir?
mag-shoutout.
Oo naman, sir. Pwede po. Can you see your slide, sir?
Hindi pa.
Naka-ano na po siya?
Yeah, ayan na. Ayan na.
Nakita mo na, sir? Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So let me start by saying that since 2010, with the DENR's use it or lose it policy, no new mining permits have been issued by the national government. And as a result, the mining industry has shrunk consistently, every year reporting a smaller contribution to the national GDP. But with the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been renewed interest in mining, with economic managers now giving the sector a long, hard look to see exactly what it has to offer in a post-pandemic Philippines. Next slide, please. Okay. You ask, why has there been renewed interest in mining in recent months? Well, for one thing, as mentioned by MGB Director Moncano, our mineral potential is said to be among the best in the world. We have big deposits for copper, gold, chromite, and nickel, and much of it is still untapped, with only about 2% of the country, approximately 600,000 hectares, being covered by mineral agreements. There are currently just 27 operating metallic mines. 27 lang po ang nag-ooperate na mina sa Pilipinas, 17 of which are in nickel, 6 are in gold, 3 are copper, and 1 chromite mining operation. The rest of the mining operations you will likely see in the news are the informal, small-scale mining operations in gold rush areas like Compostela Valley and Paracale, Camarines Norte. So, kung nating legitimate mining, we can see that we are relatively small. Compare our numbers with that of Indonesia, for instance, which as of 2018 had 177 oil and gas companies and some 112 mining operations ongoing in the country, representing 21% of their exports and 7% of their national GDP. We also have 2 nickel processing plants, one in Palawan and the other in Surigao del Norte. We have 2 gold refineries and 1 copper smelter, Pasar, which is operating in Leyte. In all, these 27 large-scale metallic mines occupy less than 10,000 hectares or 0.03% of the country's total land area. Next slide, please. But even with its reduced state, the large-scale metallic mining industry still contributed $4.3 billion to the country's exports, about 6.3%. And copper cathode, gold, and nickel remain among the country's top 10 exports in 2019. But mining contributed only 0.6% of the country's GDP in that year, paid only 25 billion pesos of total taxes to government, and employed only some 190,000 people. That's 0.4% of total employment. No? So even with significant mineral deposits for nickel, gold, copper, chromite, the large metallic mining sector does not seem to be contributing substantially to the national economy. The industry has been stymied by policy problems, resulting in no new investments and therefore no growth since 2010. Next slide. Three problematic policies that have been in effect since 2012 has stopped growth in the mining industry and discouraged the entry of new investments. First is the 8-year-old moratorium on new mineral agreements imposed under EO 79. Second is the ban on open pit mining for new projects imposed by former Secretary Gina Lopez. Third are the suspension orders issued by former Secretary Lopez that are still pending resolution in the Office of the President. These suspensions have put a cloud over the mining industry and scared off potential investors and jeopardized any plans for expansion. Also under review is the renewal of the FTAA of Oceana Gold Philippines, one of the biggest mining operations in the country. Next slide. Just one more slide on the issue of the open pit mining ban that I mentioned. We view the open pit mining ban as a serious and immediate threat to the growth of the mining industry. The open pit mining method is globally accepted and practiced all over the mining world. It is safe, and its impact on the environment can be mitigated and rehabilitated. But because of this open pit mining ban, 3 large-scale metallic mining projects, namely Tampakan, King, and Silangan, all located in Mindanao, which needs development badly, have been caught by the ban and have not moved forward. These 3 projects alone can increase the mining industry's contributions to exports to 9% and total contribution to GDP to 1.5%. They will give an additional 1.5 billion to local governments, and communities will receive directly 770 million in social development project funding. I think the worst part of these problems is the signal that it sends to prospective investors about the investment environment here for mining. We really hope that the government finally sees the folly of this policy and lifts this ban in the near future, if not sooner. Next slide. Now, moving back to the macro level, the mining industry generates several significant benefit streams for the national economy. In 2019, the mining industry paid nearly 5 billion pesos in taxes and fees to local government units, 309 million in royalty payments to indigenous peoples in ancestral domains, 5.5 billion in environmental protection and enhancement programs, and planting millions of trees in the process. We also spent over 5.1 billion on social development projects for host and neighboring communities. Thus, while the mining industry does have a heavy environmental footprint, it has been doing and giving a lot to offset this impact by bringing development and employment to remote areas of the country that need it most. Next slide. While the national impact of mining is small, at less than 1% of GDP, this can be explained by the fact that mining does not happen everywhere. It can only be found in few mineralized regions in the country. But in the regions that host large-scale metallic mining, we see that mining contributes significantly to regional GDP. For instance, here, mining contributes 22% to to Caraga, 29% to Mimaropa. That's nearly a third of their GDP, no? And 13.7% to Western Visayas. The impact is more evident in the municipalities that host large-scale mining. Despite their remote location, they have grown to become first-class municipalities. First-class municipalities po yung mga nag-host ng mining, no? For instance, Bataraza, Palawan, the remotest town in the province. It's nearer to Malaysia than Manila, but it boasts an annual income of 570 million pesos. Claver in Surigao del Norte, an annual income of 579 million. And Mangkayan and Tuba in Benguet, all remote towns whose biggest economic contributor is mining. Compare that annual income to those of other municipalities and cities like San Pedro Laguna. San Pedro Laguna annual income 492 million. Cavite City 457 million. Vigan 609 million. Naga 619. And you see just what responsible large-scale mining can do to boost the economy of a host municipality. Next slide, please. I'd like to focus now on the social development and management program. It's a community development tool that is unique to mining companies in the Philippines. And the SDMP was established under the Philippine Mining Act of 1995, and it is a comprehensive 5-year social development plan that is funded by the company. Under this program, mining companies are required to spend the equivalent of at least 1.5% of their annual operating cost for social development programs, projects, and activities that the community will identify. So it's not the mining company that says what will be done with the money. It's the community that decides what projects they want to have funded. In 2018, mining companies spent over 5 billion pesos on SDMP projects. Companies in Caraga, for instance, spent over 460 million. In CAR, 180 million. Palawan alone, 177 million. And Central Visayas, 168 million. Next slide. These are just some examples of SDMP projects being funded by mining companies. And you will see that infrastructure or buildings and roads, street lights are the most popular requests of communities when developing their social development and management programs. So mining companies have built a lot of houses, roads and bridges, tribal halls, community centers, school buildings, and community clinics. No? Next slide, please. These are more examples. No, these are daycare centers, basketball courts that double as drying facilities, access roads, community health centers, and riprap balls. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, another popular request from communities are improvements in education and training support. So here in these pictures, you will see the scholars that have benefited from mining companies' social development programs, funding for education and training. So, ayan po. So, pictures from Rio Tuba, Lepanto, Agata, Philex, and Oceana Gold. Next slide. Yes, and even more pictures. We don't just send scholars to school, we build schools, no? So you see here the schools of Lepanto, Taganito, Philex, Carmen Copper, Rio Tuba, and Filminera. Next slide. Ayan. A large part of the SDMP fund also goes to livelihood training and support. So maraming communities po nagre-request kung pwede silang mabigyan ng fishing boats, mabigyan ng puhunan to build transport cooperatives, to build their cooperative stores, to build poultry raising facilities, community farms, etc. Next slide. Some farming communities request that bigyan sila ng farm machinery to put up egg production facilities. One community even requested for the company to provide them with a tourist boat so that they can ferry tourists to and from those tourist sites in their area. Next slide. And another key area for SDMP funding is health and medical support. Here we see not just medical missions, no, but actual hospitals being built in remote areas to service not just the needs of the employees of the company, but also members of the community that are hosting mining projects. Here we see the hospital of Rio Tuba. This is a first-class hospital also Philex and Lepanto. Next slide, please. Yeah. So another key area where mining companies spend a lot of money is environmental protection and enhancement. In 2019, mining companies spent nearly 5.5 billion pesos on environmental protection and enhancement measures. As of 2019, mining companies have planted nearly 37 million seedlings, covering nearly 29,000 hectares under the DENR's Mining Forest Program. 1.1 million of these were mangrove seedlings planted in coastal areas. Under the National Greening Program of the previous administration, mining companies planted additional 14 million trees, covering 49,000 hectares. 9 million seedlings were donated to LGUs for planting in areas outside of mining camps. Now, based on these numbers, we can see that far from being environmental destroyers, mining companies are in fact one of the largest, if not the largest, sector that plants trees and restores forests. And unlike the forestry sector, when mining companies plant trees, they don't plan on cutting them down again. Next slide. Finally, one timely and relevant way to show the benefit of mining is in the ongoing fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, the MGB issued a memorandum authorizing all MGB regional offices to allow mining companies to realign their unused SDMP to support impacted communities during the implementation of the ECQ. Next slide. Now, because of this timely action by the MGB, as of August 7, 2020, mining companies have realigned a total of 407 million pesos of their SDMP budget for COVID relief. Out of this budget, a total of 380 million was utilized to procure PPEs, medical supplies, and foodstuffs for social amelioration. This effort has benefited nearly 300,000 individual frontliners and over 1 million households and families. And in the next slide, I'd like to show you some examples. Next slide. Yes, here. We see that mining companies have spent some of their budget for providing disinfectants, medicine, and protective equipment for their local frontliners and communities. Yan. Next slide. Some of the money was also spent to provide food, basic supplies, and necessities for host communities. So, ayan, makita natin maraming kadalasan ay bigas at saka food stuff for the host communities. Yeah. Next slide. In closing, we in the Chamber of Mines are hopeful that positive changes in mining policy will be forthcoming. The Department of Environment and the Department of Finance have already come out with media statements in support of large-scale mining to spur economic growth amidst the ongoing pandemic, and even afterwards, once the virus is brought under control. We hope that these statements eventually translate into the lifting of the moratorium on new projects, as well as the lifting of the ban on open pit mines. The DOF is also seriously considering action on the rehabilitation of abandoned mines, now head the Privatization and Management Office. If this is done, this should address the long-standing issue of abandoned mines in the country, another burden that current operating mines have had to bear. The key challenge now is for Congress to pass a new mining fiscal regime. There is a bill pending now in Congress that we hope will be passed before the end of the year. This, we think, will be a progressive, comprehensive fiscal regime that will allow government a bigger share in mining revenues, while at the same time still keeping the country competitive as a mining destination. So that's it. I hope I was able to give everyone an idea of the many benefit streams that mining companies generate for the country and in general, and for their host and neighboring communities in particular. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon.
Pa-close yung slideshow. Hindi ko makita. Okay. Thank you so much, Attorney Ron, for discussing the benefits of large-scale metallic mining. I will be asking my question very soon, so just stay tuned, everyone. But before that, more shout-outs to Romaba Banawis of Marikina. How do you pronounce this? Biboyski? Biboyski Albert from Gian Samar. Michael Kuat of Caloocan City. Francisco Mojos of Quezon City. Eduardo Tan of South Cotabato, MGB Mines and Geosciences Bureau, Region 12, sorry. Maricel Davad of Congressional, Quezon City. Roxanne Joy Fael of Cavite, and Arcel Santos. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, we will now proceed to our next speaker. Here we are. Our next speaker is a colleague in the media industry. From 1997 to 2012, he served in different roles at Coca-Cola, his last position being the Director for Public Affairs and Communications of the Coca-Cola Export Corporation. He also served as the team governor and manager of the professional basketball team Coca-Cola Powerade Tigers. Currently, he is the Vice President for Corporate Communications of Nickel Asia Corporation, where he has initiated numerous projects to increase awareness about the mining industry and its importance to the Philippine economy. A columnist of Malaya Business Insight, here is Mr. Jose Bayani, or JB Bailon. But before you start, Sir JB, I would like to congratulate Nickel Asia for being the first mining company in the Philippines to be accepted as one of the newest members of the United Nations Global Compact, the world body's sustainability initiative. Hope you can mention that in your talk, Sir JB. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, you already mentioned it, so I guess I don't have to mention it. But good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting us to present here. Given the fact that Director Moncano and Attorney Residoro have very ably discussed the mining industry and in general and the mining conditions in particular, allow me just to share 3 slides with regard to Nickel Asia. For those who do not know what Nickel Asia is, we are a holding company with operations in Palawan, Surigao, and Dinagat Islands. And I think we sent a slide, if that can be shown, a slide with a map. Anyway, while we're waiting for it, so we have these operations. We have 4 operating mines in the Dinagat Islands, 2 in Surigao del Norte, and 1 in Rio Tuba in Palawan. We have 3 other mines in different stages of preparations. 1 in Dinapigue in Isabela, 1 in Manicani Island in D1 Eastern Samar, and an additional mining area in Bulanjao, also part of Rio Tuba. Last year, at a time when much of industry, not only mining, suffered tremendously due to the burden of COVID, Nickel Asia was fortunate enough not only to do as well as it did in 2019, but actually surpass what it achieved in 2019. In 2019, if I'm not mistaken, we recorded an income of 2.9 billion. In 2020, we recorded an income of 4 billion. But the income is not what makes me proud to speak of Nickel Asia today. What makes me proud to speak of Nickel Asia today is why it was able to do well and why I believe will continue to be able to do well. And the primary reason was it focused on its people and its communities, and this is best exemplified by what it did in the face of COVID-19. As we all know, many of the communities in the far-flung areas were desperate for support at the height of COVID, especially in the early times or in early days where nobody knew what COVID was about. People were desperate. And in mining areas where government is not in existence, in effect, it is the mining companies through their SDMP which step into the void and provide what government is supposed to provide. That is why Nickel Asia, like all other mining firms, were asked to donate PPEs, test kits, and even food items, as Attorney Residoro has described. But there was something unique about Nickel Asia, and if you allow me to tell this story. One day, our president, Dennis Zamora, summoned me to his room and he said, "What can we do differently from what the other mines are doing? Something with a longer lasting benefit for the community." And in our discussion in his room, the idea came about that why do we not fund the first MTL lab to be put by the Red Cross in Surigao? You see, before the project was conceived, if you were from Surigao del Norte or del Sur and you needed to be swabbed for a test, the test specimen have to be brought either to Davao, to Cebu, or to Manila. Traveling to and fro alone takes so much time that a patient waiting for results, you can just imagine the tension he has to live through while waiting to see whether his results were positive or negative. So the idea was, why don't we establish an MTL lab in Surigao City itself, funded both by Nickel Asia's subsidiaries and the THPAL, and therefore cut the waiting time for the people of the area. And that is what I was proud of about Nickel Asia. The fact that it sought to do things over and beyond what is normally expected of a mining firm. It could have continued giving the usual PPEs and test kits and food items, but today there is a lab in Surigao City which will span the rest of time with facilities which will be perfect for any viral infection even once COVID is over. For Zika, for polio, for whatever, Chairman Dick Gordon has assured us that that lab is there to stay. Now, when you have mining firms which do that, they demonstrate that they are not all that the critics paint them out to be. Mine operations which destroy the environment. Director Moncano had shown that that is not the case. They're only after profit. The fact that Attorney Residor has shown how much we are spending for the community shows that that is not the case. And that we do go way beyond compliance in donating such things as an MTL lab. I am aware that after Nickel Asia announced that it was opening a lab with the Red Cross, at least 2 more mining firms in other areas of the country also approached the Red Cross to offer to put up their own labs in their own areas. And to me, the reason why I think Nickel Asia was able to pull together in 2020 and deliver excellent results is because everyone from top to bottom was able to sense that we were all in this together. In fact, maybe I should reveal it here. Our most serious instance of a COVID case happened to one of our resident mine managers who had to be flown to Manila from Surigao to save his life. I am proud to say that Nickel Asia spared no cost in flying this RMM of ours to St. Luke's, and now he has recovered, and we expect him soon to be back in harness, because to us each individual matters and the community matters, and therefore we're all in this together. Now, as pointed out again by Director Moncano and Attorney Residoro, there are many issues confronting mining firms like Nickel Asia. However, we are proud to say that given our track record, multiple awardees of the Presidential Mineral awards given out by the PIMEA, multiple awardee of the ASEAN Mineral Awards given out by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. I am proud to say that Nickel Asia companies have never been put in a situation wherein we have been problematically having to confront regulators because of violations of what we do. In fact, I am proud to say that because of the standards to which our leadership holds us up to, we continue to be able to demonstrate that there are things we can do that the rest of the mineral industry can do. And you mentioned this, Ms. Anne, when we decided to sign up with the United Nations Global Compact, which is a project of the United Nations Secretary General in his effort to encourage the private sector to pull together and put sustainability front and center in their efforts. We were surprised ourselves to find out that Nickel Asia was the first Philippine mining firm to do that. And while our president, Dennis Zamora, is proud to say that we seem to be on the right track, I keep on reminding him that holding ourselves up to the highest standards is not an easy task. And I think what makes me happy, and I know that many of my colleagues are watching from Dinapigue to Surigao to Palawan, I know that we're up to the task, that we will keep on raising the bar, because that is our commitment to ourselves, and that is our commitment to our communities. That's it, Ms. Anne.
Thank you so much, Sir JP. Thank you so much, Sir JB, for your presentation. Our next guest will give her reaction to what she has heard and learned so far in the webinar. She is a licensed mining engineer and a senior lecturer from the Department of Mining, Metallurgical, and Materials Engineering of the College of Engineering of the University of the Philippines in Diliman. Here is Ms. Rodalie Ofiaza. Ms. Rodalie, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. First of all, also I'd like to greet my colleagues, speakers, Director Moncano, Sir Larry Rades, Attorney Ronnie Orsidoro, and Sir J.D. Bailon. I've had the pleasure of working with these gentlemen the past decade, in one way or another, and I'm honored to be joining them in this webinar. Also, good afternoon to all the viewers, friends, colleagues, students, if they're watching. And I want to thank Philippines Graphic for having me. Okay, so as a mining engineer and a lecturer reactor to this webinar, and also to add more to this discourse, I would like to bring to the fore the role of the academe in the mining industry. About a decade ago, there was a news article that talked about the labor requirements of the mining industry. There were these large-scale mining projects on the pipeline, some of which were already mentioned by both Director Moncano and Attorney Residoro in their presentations. The government projected that at least another 1,000 mining engineers are needed to satisfy the manpower requirements of these mining projects. Although mining engineering is one of the oldest engineering courses offered by the University of the Philippines, there wasn't so much awareness about this profession, along with metallurgical engineering and geology. So UP, in collaboration with the Chamber of Mines, came up with the Mining 101 lecture series. It was a 5-day course for non-mining professionals that concluded with a mine tour. The main objectives were to train non-mining professionals about the basics of mining and to raise funds for the road shows of the department to sort of showcase these courses, mining, engineering, metallurgical engineering, and geology, to high school students. The long-term goal was to provide the needed manpower to develop these mining projects. From just about 40 mining engineering board takers in 2010, there have been more than 300 board takers every year since 2017. And for the years 2010 to 2019, there's been an additional 1,608 licensed mining engineers in the Philippines, alongside 502 licensed metallurgical engineers. These are the numbers of the PRC. We can say we have been successful in our objectives, but what we did not see coming are the policy changes that halted the development of these new mining projects. So, where are these mine engineers now? I personally cannot account for everyone, of course, but I'm sure some stayed. But I also know for certain that there is a good number of them who are now working abroad. Some of them are close friends and colleagues. Our perennial dilemma of brain drain is not exclusive to the medical profession. Our engineers and scientists, known for their skills, diligence, and resourcefulness, are as coveted in different parts of the world. A few years ago, in one of the conferences I attended in Brisbane, I met one of the minerals ministers of Sierra Leone, and he told me how he appreciates the work ethics of Filipino engineers and miners. Now, I wasn't sure at first if he was correctly referring to Filipinos, but when he continued to say that these workers love karaoke and with some beer, I was pretty much convinced. But in a country as far as Sierra Leone, who knew our Filipino talent could reach that far? But among the mining engineers I personally knew, some of them are now working in the Middle East, Singapore, Mongolia, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and of course, the more known mining countries like Australia and Canada. In 2019, a paper by Peter F. Knights tackled the short-term supply and demand of graduate mining engineers in Australia. He projects that there may be a deficit of 60 to 90 graduate mining engineers every year by 2021, that Australia might have to look elsewhere to provide this manpower. Mind you, these are graduate mining engineers. New blood, new graduates. There is a separate demand for seasoned and experienced mining engineers. And guess what? Australia does not have to look that far. Our country is definitely losing out on these talents, not only on technical skills, but also on the teaching and research services that these engineers and scientists can provide. With a curriculum that has dedicated subjects on socio-environmental aspects of mining, mine health, safety, environment, and security, and more weight on research, our mine engineers are not only technically equipped, but are oriented towards mining practice that is socio-environmentally responsible. To date, the department is moving forward in developing a Master of Engineering in Mining that aims to cater to the specialized needs of the industry. That is the main role of the academy, to cater to the needs of the industry for the benefit of the country and its fellow men. With faster growing mining industries outside the country, some of our engineers opt to work and even reside abroad. And this is a shame because other countries actually look to us when it comes to best practices in mining, as highlighted by Attorney Isidoro and Director Moncano, and of course, Sir J.B. Baydon of Nicolasia. In 2017, being an alumni of the Minerals and Energy for Development Alliance in Australia, I was asked to help arrange a mine tour for mining and environment officials from the Republic of Fiji, an island country in Melanesia in South Pacific Ocean. They were the ones who selected the Philippines to conduct the visit. Their mine tour objectives were very specific: to enhance capacity for individuals in carrying out assessments and monitoring of rehabilitation programs, strengthen their policy making, develop and apply related tools for implementation, improve and develop related standards in line with international ones, and create confidence in the Fijian system processes. I personally asked them upon meeting them, why the Philippines? Their answer was, we read your Mining Act and we wanted to copy some of its provisions, which we think are very applicable to us. And, well, they like our telenovelas, like Pangako Sa'yo. It was an easy choice to recommend Rio Tuba Nickel Mining in Bataraza, Palawan, and they were very impressed of the rehabilitation programs. They could not believe that the mini forest that we were standing on was actually the old tailings pond. That work was a combination of science and engineering, and it worked. With collaborative research, technical skills, and the right set of policies, responsible mining really works. If only there would be more opportunities for us to exercise that in the near future. As pointed out by Attorney Residoro, the STMP provision in the Mining Act has proven very useful in this time of pandemic in the mining communities. Mining operations are in remote locations by nature and have created bubbles out of these mining communities, which made them functional even in this pandemic. Hopefully, considering these strengths of the industry, the revival of the mining industry may come soon. Moving on, there are some opportunities for the Philippine mining industry to look forward to. The move to renewable energy will also increase the demand for metals, such as cobalt, nickel, and copper, which are central to the production of rechargeable batteries, of which the Philippines can be a major contributor. Exploring new frontiers also open up the possibilities of space and deep sea mining. And with the recent feat of exploring the Philippine deep and the ongoing organization build-up of the Philippine Space Agency, it will only be just a matter of time. I do believe that the mining industry will stay relevant, and so will the academy. And with that, I conclude my discussion. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rodely, for your valuable inputs. Okay, Shaira, we are here already in this portion, pero shout out daw muna sa ating mga boss ko dito. Shout outs to Angel Pineda of Sampaloc, Manila. Oh, to my mom in Hong Kong. Hi, mom. Mom ko yan. Ted Sandoval of MGB Central Office. Lerlin Lafrades. And then Iskansali. Shout out sa manunood from RTN Comfrel. Olga GV of Quezon City. Please like Philippines Graphic on Facebook and Business Mirror on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Okay, stand by, Shaira. Here we are. Before we start the question and answer portion, here's my question for the contest. The question is, where does Ma'am Rodely of Fiasa teach? In which university? Before you send your answer through private message, please like the FB page of Philippines Graphic. We are looking for the first, third, and fifth persons to submit their answers. Shaira will message me the winners before the end of the webinar. Let's move on to the question and answer portion, which will be moderated by the Agri-Commodities Reporter of Business Mirror, Mr. Jasper Arcalas. Jasper, take it away.
Thank you, Miss Anne. Good afternoon, everyone, especially to our esteemed panel. The first question of our Q&A will come from me. This question can be answered by all of our guests. The question, sirs and ma'am, is what is your outlook for this year's mining output? Latest MGB data showed that the value of our mining output last year grew by 1.13% to 132 billion pesos. This is driven by higher nickel output as well as higher nickel prices. So maybe we can start first with Sir Larry from MGB with his insights regarding the question. Sir Larry?
Yes, good afternoon. The MGB is definitely looking forward to increasing the production insofar as metallic mining is concerned. Because for information, there are about 300 MPSA that were already approved prior to the clampdown of then Secretary Gina Lopez that are still existing but is still under exploration. And we expect that during this time, those MPSA, those exploration activities and projects will mature into graduating into production stage. And we have now quite a number of mining projects in the pipeline that are already filing the declaration of mining project feasibility, wherein each approval will authorize them to enter into the commercial stage of operations. So definitely, we expect an increase of production by this year and during the successive years.
Thank you very much, Sir Larry. Let's go to Sir Ron Lucidor of Chamber of Mines. Sir, what are your thoughts for this year's
Yeah,
outlook?
hi, Jasper. Last year, with the onset of the quarantine, we noted a slight decrease because there were several community quarantine shutdowns locally in areas that are operating, like Surigao and the other mining areas. There were lockdowns and local shutdowns. But after the lockdowns were lifted and mining companies were deemed to be essential industries, being 100% exporters, nahabol naman ng mining industry ang kanilang quota for the year. So if you look at our total production 2020, um, nag-increase pa nga slightly ang nickel, no? For 2021, we are seeing an even increased demand, primarily because of the increased interest for batteries by the renewable energy people. No, in fact, I have had two queries this week already from Singapore and the United States looking for nickel suppliers. No, and I think this will only grow because the shift really is from away from fossil fuel and towards batteries. And while Indonesia has been leapfrogging the Philippines, I think there is still time for us to catch up. No? And let's not lose that opportunity. Yun lamang po.
Thank you very much, Sir Ron. Let's go to Sir JB from the country's biggest nickel ore producer.
You want me to talk about what I think the outlook will be for this year?
Yes, sir.
You want me to get arrested with the SEC for forward-looking statements? No, I'm just kidding. Well,
Maybe general statement, sir.
well, actually, a lot will matter for us in the nickel business. A lot will matter on what happens in China, because China is still the biggest market for nickel ore, from the Philippines. Now, Nickel Asia is a bit fortunate because we are host to the only two nickel processing plants which Attorney Residor mentioned in his presentation. Taganito HPAL in Claver and Coral Bay Nickel in Rio Tuba. These two plants produce nickel products which actually go to Japan for use in batteries. So our line to battery making is more direct than many other nickel processing plants, operations. So when we hear of a growing desire to move away from fossil fuel cars going to battery operated cars, excited kami, because that is good for us. No, I think it's also good for us in general, not only for us in particular. But then again, China remains a major factor in determining whether business will be good this year as it was last year. Because if the London Metal Exchange prices remain high, then there will be many nickel operations which would normally not be profitable that would be profitable because the London Metal Exchange prices are high. But when those dip, then some of the operations become less profitable and they close. So that's all I can say without running afoul of the
SEC. Thank you, sir. Professor Rodoli, do you want to add something?
Yeah. Siguro, what I can add to the floor is the raised interest in conducting more research. In fact, like I've already mentioned in my reaction, which is also echoed by the gentleman about the move to renewable energy. Renewable energy. Metals will always be important and will always be relevant in producing these rechargeable batteries. Early this year, actually late last year, towards the end of last year and early this year, there was already interest from UK to conduct collaborative research with the Philippines regarding our mining potential. No? This is through PSURD and of course all the academic at academia, no? Not just UP. No? May mga partners tayo in Mindanao, also the other mining and metallurgical schools here in Manila, also in Bicol, and so on and so forth. So it is the outlook is good. I cannot comment so much on production because again, it's always a function of what can be produced by these mining companies. And but I can say that without getting in any trouble with the SEC or what, uh, the uncertainty that brought about by the pandemic really did increase the metal prices. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for Philippine mining companies to to ride on and increase the production. And of course, that will also benefit the country. So I think that's what I think.
Thank you very much. And as a follow-up question to that, to our panel, you have mentioned the opportunities provided by the EV industry, by the growing EV industry. How about what are the headwinds or challenges for the year? What are the challenges that are we seeing that the mining industry could face this year, aside from the COVID-19 pandemic? Let's go again. Start with Sir Larry.
Yes, of course, hindi pa tayo, the policy is not yet settled sa mining. We're still looking forward to the lifting of the MPSA moratorium, the granting of MPSA, and the lifting of the open pit ban. If that two are resolved and the industry will go smoothly forward, then we can show a higher confidence sa investors to put in more investments sa mining dito.
Thank you very much, Sir Larry. Sir Ron, do you want to add something to that? As you mentioned also that that policy change you're expecting.
Yes, tama si Larry. Talagang apat na bagay lang naman talaga. Number one is yung moratorium on new mining projects. Number two is the ban on open pit mining. Number three are yung suspension orders issued in 2017 which have not been fully resolved. And number four is the renewal of the OceanaGold FTAA. The OceanaGold FTAA is probably the biggest mining project that is currently still hanging. Now, the fact that it's hanging, a simple renewal cannot be renewed, it sends the wrong signals to investors. It scares everybody who wants to invest in the Philippines. Because investing in mining is by itself inherently risky already. You spend $1 billion to explore, and there is no guarantee na may tatamaan kang mineral deposit, di ba? So that by itself, risky already. But here, if yung permit mo ay hindi mo makuha, or kung nakuha mo man ay hindi mo ma-renew, mas tumataas ang risk. And no sane investor will put down $1 billion in the Philippines if the policy environment is unclear and the risks are as high as they are right now. Yun po.
Thank you very much, Sir Ron. Sir JB, do you have any thoughts on the challenges for this year? Without going again, without getting chased again.
Sa akin lang, I think the Philippines has to make up its mind. No? Kasi when you talk to, when I bring students to Yotuba and whether that they're pro or anti-mining, you get questions like, but the contribution of mining to the GDP is only X%. To labor, it's only X%. You see, if you want that to grow, then you open up more areas to mining. If you refuse to open up areas to mining, how do you expect the share of the industry to grow? Now, if you want labor numbers to grow, then let's take away all the trucks in large-scale mining and let people, haul the ore from port to. And hindi naman pwede yun, di ba? So I guess you should not look at the industry, let's say, to solve your unemployment issue. So I don't think how much employment is generated is not an issue because large-scale mining is not labor-intensive. It is machine-intensive. But if you're talking about what share of GDP do you contribute, the question is, if you keep on stalling in opening up mining areas to operations, then your GDP contribution will remain so small. So make up your mind. And to me, that is the greatest problem facing the industry moving forward. The fact that, we don't know what we really want. Yun lang. That doesn't violate SEC rules.
But do you want us to check your blood pressure?
No, no, I'm fine.
You're fine. You're good, sir. Okay, for Professor Rodalie, if you want to add something, ma'am.
Yeah,
What
I
some
just
industry
want to
secrets here?
yeah, I just want to highlight one thing. No? If you go back to the video of Director Moncano, no? He he actually emphasized there that the mining method is dictated by the geological characteristics of the ore body. And coming from someone from the academe, no, what I want to emphasize is that we need policies that is evidence based, based on science, based on engineering. This is what we've been taught, no, engineers and scientists. So if you have a policy that bans open pit mining, when in the first place it is not out of whim that mining companies conduct this method. It is based again on science, geology. So we really have a problem. So I hope the call from the academy most especially is that um, this should be a collaboration. No? If there are policies, if there are problems that the government sees that we have to come up with something to mitigate something, um, don't just do it from one perspective. You know, there is the academy. Ask their help. We have very competent people from the academia, not just from the industry. You know, so that we can help. We can have policies that work hand in hand. You know, that's what I think.
Jasper, may I add something to what
Sure, sir,
you know,
JB.
talking about banning a means or a method of mining. When
Mhm.
I explain this to students, I ask them, sino sa inyo ang pinanganak na cesarean? Sino sa inyo ang pinanganak na normal delivery? Bakit yung iba cesarean? Bakit yung iba normal delivery? And the answer is, it depends on the condition of the core body or the kid. If you will force a method of giving birth to a woman whose ore body or baby is in the wrong situation, you will kill the baby, you will kill the mother. It is the same thing in this whole, sorry for my Greek, stupid idea of banning certain methods. You cannot do that. It is unscientific. And so if you don't understand the science of engineering, think of the science of birth, which we all went through. Some of us were delivered normally because you were in a normal position in your mother's womb. I and my brothers were delivered cesarean because there was something wrong with my mother. Had my mother been forced to deliver us in a normal way, I may not be here today spouting all this anger at the stupid rules about the methods. I want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir JB. Sir, I was delivered straight sa Papag sa province. Sir, our next question from our viewer, Mr. George Yap III. This question is directed to Sir Larry and Sir Ron Isidoro. The question is, how can the MGB and the Chamber support a responsible mining company like Oceana Gold in securing the renewal of their FTAA so that they can resume operating again? Is it clear, sir? Did you get the question clear? Should I repeat the questions? Okay, so let's start with Sir Larry. Sir?
From the start of the expiration, the application for renewal of Oceana Gold was immediately forwarded to the Office of the President by the DNR. So under the review, the main problem of Oceana Gold is actually in the IP NCIP requirements. So it was now resolved. The issue is resolved insofar as the NCIP issue is concerned. But the Office of the President forwarded back the application for the DNR and DOF to conduct a study on the possible renegotiation. So we had several meetings with the Oceana Gold and the DOF and the DNR, and we have already forwarded a report to the Secretary, si Matu, and together with the report is the amendment, some certain amendment of the FTA, and it's ready to be forwarded again to the Office of the President for as a compliance. That's the status today.
Thank you, Sir Larry. Sir Ron?
So Oceana Gold is a member company of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, and as a member, we in the chamber are duty bound to help Oceana Gold. No, since September 2020 last year, the chamber has been actively lobbying for the renewal of Oceana Gold's FTAA. We've been approaching numerous avenues in order to reach not just DNR, but also DOF and the Office of the President. So in September, we were consulted by the Secretary of Finance on for us to identify exactly what benefits flow from Oceana Gold. No, so they wanted definite numbers, and we gave it to them. We were able to highlight exactly what Oceana Gold was contributing in terms of taxes, royalties, fees, money spent in community, money spent on environmental protection, etc. So our recommendations were contained in a draft executive order, and that has been submitted to the Office of the President. No, yun yung mini-mention ni Larry kanina. So our understanding was signing of that EO was imminent as of last year, but I think it cannot be avoided. Oceana Gold is not just a technical issue; it's also a political issue. You know very well who are against the project, and they hold very strong political influence, and that has, I believe, made the executive think twice about moving forward with this renewal. So that's where we are. No, this is already a political issue, and has to be resolved at that level. Kasi at the technical level, the Office of the President already knows exactly what government will be getting from Oceana Gold's renewed operations. So nandun tayo.
Thank you very much, Ron. As a follow-up question by Mr. George Yap III, addressed to Sir Larry again. Sir Larry, how can large-scale mining projects be insulated from the whims and caprices of local politicians? Which I think Sir Ron said, the politics part. Go on, Sir Larry.
Uh, Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. It's a political whimsical something like that. I'm a mining engineer. I work with the government, and I cannot answer that. Sorry.
It's okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, our next question, we're down to our last two questions, sir. So our next question is from Mr. Paul Villora of North Cotabato. The question is, why is the mining industry not thriving in other areas in Mindanao, particularly Central Mindanao?
Yung first yan.
Who wants
Yung tanong
to
ni...
answer first from our panel? Maybe we should go with Sir Ron from the industry perspective, from the chamber's perspective.
Well, the simple answer is Central Mindanao does not have significant mineral deposits. Walang tama si Rodney kanina eh. The mine does not choose where to operate. Minerals that dictate. So kung walang ginto or copper sa area, walang magagawa ang mining company. We cannot. It does not make sense for us to go in and mine kung wala namang miminahin. So yun lamang po yun. But I think what should be stressed here is the fact that there has been minimal exploration work conducted in the country. Right now, less than 2% of the country has been explored. Can you imagine? We call ourselves one of the most mineralized countries in the world. But I think that's an empty boast. We don't really know what we have until we've gone out and gathered samples and done our drilling. No? Other countries are bullish on exploration because they want to know ano ba talaga ang nasa ilalim ng lupa natin. But tayo, exploration pa lang, takot na ang tao, ayaw nila. We should understand that exploration is not yet mining. It's just gathering samples. I think Rodney can add to that discussion, but we should encourage increased exploration in promising areas. That's the only way we will know. And I think in the area of BARM, that area is virgin territory. There has been no exploration done there whatsoever. And there are rumors of oil and gas deposits being present. We don't know. So the first thing we need to do is find out.
Thank you very much, Sir Ron. Let's ask Professor Rodalie. Ma'am, you have been summoned by Sir Ron.
Yeah, like I already mentioned earlier, no, this is mining is really dictated by science, geology. No? If people are wondering why there's no mining in Metro Manila, well, simply because there's nothing to mine in Metro Manila. There's no mining industry in Metro Manila. It's the same thing as with Central Mindanao. Now, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on all the viable mineral resources in the whole country, you know, but maybe Sir Larry Hernandez could shine some light on what is really found in different parts of the country. But again, Sir Ronnie is right. We have to do more exploration, and I just have to reiterate, no, the exploration process, like already discussed before by Sir Ronnie, is a big risk. And in fact, exploration expenses are sunk costs. Well, if some of my students are watching, sunk cost is not even considered in evaluating mining projects, meaning those are foregone costs. Those are foregone expenses by those who took the time, took the risk in finding out if there is really something on the ground. So um, the government is engaging usually, it's always the private sector because it's exploration is big money, it's big cost. So it's hindi siya basta-bastang activity, hindi siya mura. And I'm sure Sir Larry Radis can attest to that. Of course, the mining companies, Sir JB and Sir Ron Isidore could attest to that. But if the Philippines is really serious in investing in making good use of our mineral resources, exploration must be done. Yeah, we are exploring new territories. We have the Benham Rise. There's exploration of the Philippine Deep. Also, BARM, if they would want to explore that industry, the mining industry, there has to be sufficient investment, and the policies should allow for these investments to happen.
Thank you very much, Professor Rodalie. Sir Larry, you have been summoned as well. Could you shed light what's in Central Mindanao?
Yes, statistic-wise, the number of mining application and the approved exploration permit is not that numerous sa Region 12, sa Central Mindanao. Maybe the land use classification, the political situation, but as far as record is concerned, it has been a long time that that the Central Mindanao, very few are application are being filed in that area.
Thank you, Sir Larry. Hindi pa po pala tayo last two questions. Nagsimula po tayo sa open pit questions. Ngayon, digging deeper na tayo. Underground na po yung mga questions natin. The next question po is addressed to Sir Larry from Mr. Francisco Mojos. Sir, meron daw po bang plano ang MGB to raise the fees and penalties being imposed to mining companies who have violations? As per the current rate, according to Mr. Mojos, the amount of penalties is too small, which ranges from 1,000 to 5,000 pesos per violation.
Yes, based on records and discussion with the certain lawmakers, there was a pending. There were many pending bill sa Congress natin that proposes the amendment of the Mining Act. And since then, the MGB stood by its position that the Mining Act needs no amendment anymore, except for the penal provision. So we are recommending an increase in the penal provision of the Mining Act, not in any other aspect of it, but the penal provision. Maybe some provision will have to be improved, but not entirely, not on the amendment that is now being proposed by other groups sa Congress.
Thank you very much, sir. And speaking of pending legislation, our next question from our viewer that messaged our Facebook page directly. This is addressed to the whole panel. What are your thoughts on the pending mining fiscal regime bill in the Congress? So let's start again with Sir Larry. So, since Sir Larry, you ended your earlier answer with that.
Yes, we defer to the what the proposed bill is, kung ano yung papasa doon sa Congress, but we do have the close engagement and communication with the Chamber of Mines and the mining industry with regards to that proposal of increasing the sharing scheme, Um, but
Thank
of
you,
course,
Sir.
being the MGB always defer to what is the Congress will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Larry. Sir Ron, what are your thoughts on the pending bill, which I think it's been
Oh,
2 years already?
well, it's been filed since the 15th Congress. There's always a version, no? But the latest version, filed by Congressman Salceda, House Bill 6135, is something that the industry can support, no? Because for one, it's progressive, and it does not, well, it will keep us competitive as against other mining countries. Why do I say this? Currently, ang mineral taxes that mining companies pay is based on gross output, no? So kung halimbawa nabenta natin yung ginto for 100 pesos, ang buwis na kinakaltas ng gobyerno ay 4 na piso. Whether or not ang cost mo ay 95 pesos to make that 100 pesos or 70 pesos. It doesn't matter. Basta kukunin niya yung 4 pesos. Kahit lugi ka na, government will get 4 pesos.
Okay.
Itong bill na ito proposes a new tax which is called a royalty, but it's sliding, meaning tumataas yung rate depending on kung gaano kalaki ang profit mo. So kung mas mataas ang kinita mo for that year, mas mataas yung tax rate na mag-a-apply sa'yo. Para siyang additional income tax, kumbaga. We find this, may tier siya. This we find to be more equitable kasi for one, it's based on profit, not revenue. Meaning, it considers kung kumikita ba yung kumpanya o hindi. No? So, for the mining industry, it's okay to increase our tax, basta it's based on profit. Meaning, may kita kami, kumikita kami. Ang nangyayari kasi ngayon, gustong taasan dati, yung previous versions, gustong taasan yung tax, but based on gross. Meaning, kahit lugi ka na, dapang-dapa ang kumpanya, parang sinipa ka pa. Pengin ng 10 pesos instead of 4, pengin 10 pesos. Dapa ka na nun, ha? Ayun. So, we think that the Salceda bill is something that will be equitable for everybody, while at the same time, giving government a bigger share in mining revenues.
Thank you, Sir Ron. Sir JB, do you want to add something without the PSC chasing?
Alam mo yung point ni Sir Larry at ni Attorney Ron about taxes, no? Ako, I consider SDMP itself a tax. Diba? Hindi pa nga kumikita ang kumpanya, required ka na ng batas, which is why the law is, I mean, it's an amazing law. I mean, I am told that it led the world in looking at mining laws this way, no? It already imposes on operation a requirement to spend X% for the community based on your operational budget, no? Whether nakikita ka sa huli, tax na yun eh. And to me nga, sabi ko, it is meant to have the mining firm step into the shoes of government in his community and spend that money which government should be doing itself. And so to add some other tax which is unfair or unjust would be crazy. Part of things, sabi ko, you have to make up your mind. So I am not surprised that a guy like Joey Salceda, who usually has his head screwed right, no? This proposal, na, as Attorney Ron was saying, is worth supporting because the mining industry is the only industry in the Philippines where hindi ka pa nag-uumpisa, may buwis ka na, and that's called the SDMP.
Thank you very much, Sir Ron. Professor Rodri, what are your thoughts from the academic perspective? regarding
Uh,
the
I,
bill?
yeah, I would just like to give context dun sa ina-elaborate nila Attorney Residoro and Sir JB, no? Mining operations kasi for one company would take years, no? Hindi ito like just one decade, 25 years, 50 years it could be. So just imagine the risk the mining company takes. There's the natural mining boom and bust with the prices. They have to weather the storm of really low metal prices and the those peaks, no, which are not. This does not happen all the time. Actually, this pandemic period is such a lot of uncertainty. But of course, we don't expect there's always going to be a pandemic for the entirety of mining operations, and this will not always lead to high metal prices. And honestly, these are the times when the government would feel like, oops, teka lang, I think we're missing out on taxes kasi laki ng kita nyo bigla, mataas ang metal prices. But what the government doesn't realize is that a mining company has to manage its mine life during those times na halos break even na lang yung operations mo. So yeah, I echo that sentiment that it shouldn't be entirely based on gross revenues. No, you have to consider the risk that the mining companies are already taking for the long life, for taking in the risk of the natural mining boom and bust. This doesn't just happen in the Philippines. This happens to all mining companies around the world. And in fact, very very special pa yung case ng Philippines kasi as highlighted by Sir JB, no, wala pa talagang taxes, may SDMP na. Yung SDMP, meron pa siyang equivalent sa na community development program sa exploration. Na kung tutusin, during the exploration part, wala pa talagang kinikita ang mining companies at all. So I think there really should be some leg room for mining companies when it comes to the fiscal regime. So hopefully there's really I appreciate that there's already good collaboration of the respective industries and stakeholders are being consulted for this for finalizing the fiscal regime, and I hope everyone will be heard and what I've mentioned would be very much considered.
Thank you, Ma'am Rodalie. And thank you for the insights and the wisdom of our panel. Wala na po tayong mga questions. Na-mine na po lahat. Going back to Miss Anne.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jasper, for moderating the question and answer portion. And thank you to our guests, Sir Larry, Sir Ron, Sir JB, and Ms. Rodalie, for participating in this webinar. Thank you so much. To give his closing remarks, may I call back our publisher, Mr. T. Anthony C. Cabangon.
Graphic and Business Mirror extend our sincerest thanks to all our guests. I wish to announce that the highlights of our sustainability webinar will be published in the May 2021 issue of the Philippines Graphic. And for all of you who have participated in this webinar with your comments and questions, you are entitled to this certificate of participation. Stay tuned for the next Philippines Graphic and Business Mirror webinar sometime in April. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Boss Anton. May shoutouts pa rin ako. Shoutout sa Barangay San Vicente, Binyan City, office staff, Buboy Urbina, Clarice Magelino, Tessa Albotra, Tessa Adjo Hicana, Cap Doc Paul Alzona, Jan Janelle Mandip, Jack Relon, and Vin Mikua. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. So going back to our question, where does Ma'am Rodalie of FIASA teach? In which university? Ayan. The answer is University of the Philippines, Diliman. And the winners are... Wait lang ha. We had to disqualify one of the winners, supposed winners, because he or she did not like our Facebook page. Sorry na lang po kayo. And here are the winners. I'll just look for Shaira. Here we are. And the winners are... Here we are. The winners are Dexy N. Baay, Jessica May Balingkit, and Francisco Mojos. Congratulations, and this is your prize. I'll just get it, ha? Sorry, ito. This is your prize. It looks like a turbo cooker, pero ano lang po siya, chopper. And then, mga guests, before I end and say goodbye, baka meron po kayo mga shoutouts. Sir Larry, may shoutout po kayo? Baka gusto niyo i-shoutout yung mga staff niyo dyan?
I would like just to congratulate Jessica Baligit. You mentioned that one of the winners is my staff.
Ay, kaya pala po. Sir Ron, kayo po, may mga shoutout po?
Wala
Sir
naman.
Ron.
Binabati ko lang yung mga taga Laguna, ha? Marami palang nakikinig from Binyan and Santa Rosa.
Opo.
Nakakatuwa.
Thank you, sir. Sir JB po.
Yung aming internal chat group sa Messenger, mga taga Riotuba, Tinapige, taga Nito, Hinatuan, at saka Kagjanaw, na-excite dahil nababanggit yung mga panel. At saka si Dexy na nanalo ay isa rin namin empleyado. So, baka arborin ko yung pinanalunan na yan.
Sige. Thank you, Sir JP. Miss Rodalie, before we go, any shoutouts po?
I also just want to comment, Dexy and Jessica are both mining engineers, by the way. Also graduates from UP, so congratulations, guys. Shout out to my friends who have been messaging me nonstop. So I can see my phone exploding there. Students who are watching, also some friends who are maybe watching abroad or here locally. Hello.
Okay. Thank you, Roda. Jasper, ikaw, baka meron din.
No, I just want to thank our panelists, ma'am, for today. Thank you for the insights and for the wisdom you imparted to our public today. And here's a virtual clap for everyone.
Yan yung pinag-usapan nyo ni Ed. Okay, thank you so much. And before we go, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Nickel Asia Corporation, Taganito Mining Corporation, Cagjanao Mining Corporation, Rio Tuba Nickel Mining Corporation, Hinatuan Mining Corporation, Clean Fuel and iWave Incorporated, the ALC Media Group, Coke, CNN Philippines, DOH.PH, DWIZ, 97.9 Home Radio, Filipino Mirror. I would also like to thank the following for all their support: Jasper for agreeing to moderate the question and answer portion, Ed, Philip, Sari, Faye, Lorraine, and Briggs for running the show behind the scenes. To Ma'am Saiki, Ma'am Chuchay, and Boss Anton, thank you for your unending support and guidance. To Dennis, Shaira, Carlo, Charm, Queenie, Maribel, Leia, Rodel, April for making this possible. Until our next webinar on Saturday, this has been your host, Ann Ruth de la Cruz. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much po.